All right.
Excuse me. Now starting the Thursday, August 6, 2020 Mount Pleasant Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Kane, will you call roll?
Commissioner Daly,
You're on mute.
Commissioner Daly's present. Commissioner Friedrich,
Here.
Commissioner Hunwig,
Here.
Commissioner Horgan,
Here.
Commissioner Irwin,
Here.
Commissioner Kostreva, Commissioner Leach, Commissioner Orman,
Here.
Commissioner Rise.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Mr. Daly, you're unmuted. Hopefully we can catch you. We'll come back. Commissioner Friedrich,
Here. Or aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice,
Aye.
Commissioner Daly.
I had the sound.
Gotcha. Thank you. Madam Chair, that was approved unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the July 9th regular meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Daly,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice.
Aye.
All right, Madam Chair, approved unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the July 9th, 2020 work session.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Daly,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that was approved unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Zoning Board of Appeals report. Commissioner Friedrich.
Madam Chair, we did not meet.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is communications. Mr. Kane.
Madam Chair, we have no communications this evening.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is SUP 2005 and SGR 2006. Mr. Kane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just ask if our host can allow me to share my screen. I'm currently disabled. It's when you all hum the Jeopardy theme song just to keep it interesting. Oh, there we go.
I'm not seeing a prompt. Is it working?
I got it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Madam Chair, our first case tonight is a special use permit and site plan application from Stash Ventures You may recall earlier this year, the Planning Commission approved a special use permit and site plan application at this site for for a medical marijuana Class C grow operation with 3 Class C grow licenses. The application tonight is looking to modify that site plan approval associated with the special use permit to make some adjustments to the site, primarily removal of a small addition at the rear of the grower building and the addition of HVAC units, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units that will be placed around that building on the exterior of the building. The site in question is zoned SEI industrial with a future land use of industrial. The current use is a multi-tenant industrial site. There's a yoga studio and hair salon on site, as well as the grower building and a few vacant unused buildings at this point that are also on that property. The property owner is the Applicant Statement Ventures LLC. The site's just over 8.5 acres in size. To orient you with the property, this is located on West Pickard Street, just to the north and west of the U.S. Postal Service. The site is composed of several parcels, separate parcels. You'll see in the center of this aerial image, if you look at my cursor, you can see where the cultivation building in question is located. The front retail building currently has the yoga studio here, not a yoga studio in it, currently has a hair salon at that location. Surrounding zoning is largely consistent with the industrial zoning and future land use of the subject property. I will note that to the north, there are properties that are located in the Charter Township of Union. On the screen, you'll see a photograph of that cultivation building in its current state looking towards the north. So this would be from that front parking area as you enter the site off of Pickard Avenue looking toward the north. The second image shows the rear of that same building. You'll note on the left in the foreground behind the dumpster, the red dumpster, is the addition in question that the applicant is looking to remove. And in its place, as well as along this side, and the far side of the building to place those HVAC units. Medical marijuana growers are subject to a special use permit in the industrial district. As I mentioned earlier, this applicant has already been issued a special use permit earlier this year, and none of the changes proposed tonight will have an impact on their ability to meet the special use conditions that are outlined within the ordinance for medical marijuana growers. And there are several of those conditions. On the screen, I'll show you an overview of the site plan. As I mentioned, if you can see my cursor here, this would be the area where that building addition is proposed to be removed and some HVAC units placed on the slab that remains from that unit. In addition, the applicant's proposing to add additional HVAC units along the east and the west sides of that cultivation building. Beyond that, there's no other site plan changes proposed beyond what was originally approved earlier this year. The plan complies with the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, and I've noted that the proposed screening of the HVAC units on the east side of the building, the manner of screening is consistent with the ordinance. As is typical for the landscaping plan, we would need the species and size at time of planning on the final site plan before issuing that final site plan approval. In addition, staff is recommending tonight, because we still have outstanding conditions from the earlier approval, that those outstanding conditions carry through with your motion tonight. And so staff is recommending approval of the special use permit and site plan review, subject to the applicant continuing to meet the special use permit criteria for medical marijuana facilities and for growers, that we do get the specifications for that screening in the proposed landscaping, as was proposed earlier this year, that the applicant combine the subject properties into one parcel before the certificate of occupancy is issued for the grower building, and that the applicant comply with the requirements of Public Works and Public Safety. We do have several representatives of the applicant with us tonight, and I would welcome any questions from the Planning Commission.
I got a question, if I may.
Sure.
First page there, Jacob, with the yellow lines, the overhead photo.
Yeah, those are the parcel boundaries.
Okay, so can you put that back on the screen?
Yes.
But all those parcels are owned by the same person or entity, right?
Correct.
Okay, I assume that parcel in the middle is SD, is that I or 1?
SDI. All of the subject parcels are zoned identically.
Okay, so that the one that's surrounded is an SD1 or I.
All of the parcels are SDI.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Kane? If the applicant would like to speak?
We don't really have any comments.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Hearing none, I will open this up for public comment if there is anyone from the public that would like to comment on this hearing. Being that there's no public comment, I'm closing public comment and opening discussion. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve SUP 2005 and SPR 2006, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall comply with all special use permit criteria for medical marijuana facilities, as well as the specific criteria applying to growers. 2, the applicant shall provide a landscaping plan which includes species and size of proposed plantings. 3, the applicant shall combine the 3 subject parcels into one parcel prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy. And 4, the applicant shall comply with the requirements of public works and public safety.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Kane, if you'll take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Daly,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman,
Aye.
Commissioner Vise.
Aye.
All right, Madam Chair, motion was approved unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is SUP 2006 and SPR 2008. Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next case is a special use permit and site plan request for site changes to an existing automatic car wash. The subject property is located at the corner of South Mission Street and Locust Street. The property is zone CD4 General Urban. It is a future land use of commercial / mission redevelopment overlay district. As I mentioned, the current use is as an automatic car wash. Property owner is MDC Coast 7 LLC, and the site is just shy of 1 acre. The map on the screen will help orient you to the location of the property, which is on the west side of South Mission Street, the northwest corner with Locust Street. The subject property has been used as a car wash since 1987, and there was an expansion in 1994. You'll note that looking at the parcel boundaries on this map, there is a secondary parcel here, which at the time up until 1994 contained a home, which was removed in 1994 to expand the operations. Until 2019, the property was owned by Firehouse Car Wash. It's currently operated as a Mr. Car Wash. The applicant is seeking approval tonight to add 2 self-service kiosks to the area on the north side of the site where folks pay for and enter the car wash facility, as well as to enclose the existing dumpster on the property to zoning ordinance requirements. The car wash is currently open 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays. The applicant is not proposing to change those hours of operation. The self-service kiosks and vacuums will remain inoperable during the periods that the car wash is not open. Surrounding properties along Mission Street primarily share the same zoning and future land use characteristics. The properties immediately to the west are zone CD3 urban residential and primarily consist of single and 2-family dwellings. Photograph on your screen will show current conditions on the property. This is taken from Locust Street looking towards the north. You'll see that on the left-hand side of your screen is the existing automatic car wash building, as well as the existing dumpster. There is a public alley that runs along the western edge of this property. South Mission Street would be located over here to the right. The view on your screen now will show your perspective looking from South Mission Street, the public sidewalk, toward the southwest. Again, the automatic car wash building located in the background. The kiosks that are proposed for construction would be located in approximately this area on the right-hand side of your screen. Just to give you some perspective, this is typically where folks today queue in line. The attendant booth is located here. And so in this general area, there'd be the self-service kiosk to let the subscription customers access the car wash independently. Site plan is currently shown on your screen. As I mentioned, that northeast corner is where the self-serve kiosks are proposed to be located, along with some concrete removal and replacement to go with that. And on the southwest corner of the site, the existing dumpster is proposed to be enclosed to code. Plan information complies with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. The applicant is not proposing any modifications to the existing building that would impact setbacks or building standards. The proposed site plan does bring the site back into compliance with the 1994 site plan approval in terms of landscaping. There were some elements of the landscaping and screening from that approval that over the years have disappeared from the site. And the site also brings the site into compliance with today's landscaping requirements and screening requirements as well, primarily through the addition of some extra screening along that western property edge, which abuts the public alley, and across the alley, the residential district. In addition, the applicant's proposing to fully screen the dumpster to code. Today, that dumpster is out in the open, unscreened and unprotected from both illegal access, but also the scattering of trash or debris in between emptying. So with that, we do have representatives of the applicant here this evening to answer your questions. Staff recommends approval of the special use permit and site plan review, subject to meeting the requirements of Public Works. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kane? If the applicant would like to speak?
No, ma'am. I think I'm good. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Do you guys own other car washes with the same kiosk system?
Yeah, a really good question. So not in our region in particular, but yes, throughout the company, it's the same sort of setup that we have at anyone that does have a kiosk. It'll be the exact same kiosk that we've been installing at these newer ones. Grand Rapids would probably be the closest ones to us at this point.
Okay, so if I understand how they work right, then you'll have two kiosks that people who have a subscription service, they get a card or a code or something to put in, then they could just pull right ahead of whoever else is in the other lanes. Kind of like McDonald's does it now with the two that funnel into one. Is it similar to that?
It is similar in the sense that it will merge into one lane from two. So yes, we have RFID stickers that our windshields are equipped with.
Oh, okay.
That will actually have fast pass readers that read the fast pass, open up the gate, and then you can go at your own leisure. So it speeds it up a little bit for the wash club member that does tend to visit more frequently. And it adds an extra sort of an inherent benefit as well for convenience.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So these aren't credit card kiosks at all. You have to have a subscription to get through.
That's another great question too. So the members lane will be a little set up a little different than the retail lane. They'll both be able to take credit cards. So you don't necessarily have to have a membership. You can go up there and purchase a retail wash by using your credit card. We have them manned by customer service advisors. So that's something that a lot of the time it almost looks like it's a negative preconceived notion initially, like we're taking the employees away, but not by any means. They'll be manned by individuals all day long and able to take credit cards as well at each one.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, then I will start the public hearing portion of this hearing. If anyone from the public would like to comment. Hearing no one from the public, I will close the public hearing and open up discussion.
Move to approve SCP 2006 and SPR 2008, subject to the following condition. Comply with requirements of Public Works.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Daly,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Orman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion was approved unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. This is the last opportunity for anyone from the public to comment. Mr. Kane, is there anyone from the public to comment?
On the call, there's only one name I don't recognize. But in our comment inbox, we don't have any electronic submittals at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. And hearing no one seeking to say anything, I will close public comment and move to the next item on the agenda, which is SPR 2007. Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our last case this evening is a site plan review. This subject property is zone SDI industrial. Current use is it's a multi-tenant industrial development, primarily used by Coyne Oil Company as their headquarters. Property owner is Coyne LLC. Site area is 16.5 acres. And the request tonight is to approve construction of a solar array, which consists of 11 ground-mounted solar panels. Subject property, as I mentioned, is composed of multiple parcels. There's a variety of uses on the property. In general, the property is located on the north side of Pickard Avenue, between the railroad tracks and Harris Street. The majority of the property is zone SDI industrial. The southwest corner is zone CD4. That's the location of the Pickard Avenue Sico station. There are a mix of uses in the area, primarily to the east and south. Properties are used and zoned industrially. To the immediate west is the Mount Pleasant Center property, a portion of which is owned by the city of Mount Pleasant and a portion of which is owned by the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. To the south and west, there is some commercial property, including Lake Trust Commercial Credit Union, and then residential properties further to the south and west. As I mentioned, the applicant seeking approval for 11 ground-mounted solar panels. In this particular case, we are approaching this retroactively as the solar panels were installed without the benefit of a site plan approval or building permits. This is 2 of the 11 panels. The array is arranged in a manner that 2 panels are more or less together. And as you'll see in the next image, the other 9 panels are located sort of in a cluster. This picture is looking from the south edge of the property along Pickard Avenue towards the north. And so you can see just on the far left side of the screen, peeking out is one of those 2 solar panels I showed you in the previous image. In the foreground of this picture, you'll see the other 9 solar panels that are arranged more in the center of that property. The panels are at quite a distance from the adjacent property boundaries, but nevertheless, there are no setback requirements for solar panels in the SDI zoning district. On your screen, you'll see an overview of the site plan. So again, in this case, north is going to be to your left. To the right-hand side, this dark black line, that's Pickard Avenue. As I mentioned, the first of the 2 solar panels are located here on the south side of one of the existing buildings. And then the other 9 solar panels are arranged here, more or less in the center of the overall site plan. The plan does comply with all of the requirements of the zoning ordinance for completion. And as I noted earlier, solar panels are not subject to a setback requirement in the SDI zoning district. Staff is recommending that the site plan review be approved subject to the condition that the applicant comply with the requirements of public safety. Madam Chair, I'd welcome any questions from the Planning Commission. I know we have Mr. Coyne and Mr. Beebe here representing the applicant to speak to the case as well.
Any questions for Mr. Kane?
I do have one, if I may. Jacob, the solar panels, do we have special rules over that? Or is that just a question of where it's being built that they need a special use permit?
Well, the case tonight, this is just a site plan review, not a special use permit. Because they're essentially an accessory structure and because they're ground mounted, that triggered the site plan review process in this case.
Okay, so that would apply to just about anybody that wanted to build these.
If they were looking to build a ground mounted solar array, yes. A rooftop mounted
Okay.
solar array would be subject only to building permits.
Well, I guess it's lucky then that we don't have particular rules or setbacks or things. I'm all about solar panels. I bet I was in the solar panel business 40 years ago. It'd be a much harder nut to crack if indeed there were setback requirements that had been, that these were not in compliance with.
Any other questions for Mr. Kane? If the applicant would like to speak.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay, wasn't certain whether or not you could hear me. Good evening, my name's Tim Beebe. I'm with Central Michigan Surveying and Development. I'm here on behalf of Coin Oil, the applicant owner of the property. They have installed 11 solar panels. Their belief at the time was that they did not require a site plan for solar panels. Unfortunately, they found out afterwards by city staff that that was not the case, and we are coming before you in an after the fact situation. I apologize on behalf of my client. Don't like being in that situation, but that's the situation we find ourselves in. Jacob has gone through the site plan review. I don't have a lot to add. He always does my job better than I do, I guess. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I believe we have one of the owners of Coin Oil on also, if you have any questions for them.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Tim, is the array being used
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
is the array being used to as electricity and power for the facility? Is it being used to sell basically power back to the utility company?
It's being used for power on the site.
And so there, I mean, it's a small enough array such that all the power will be consumed. Do I assume that correctly?
You do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? I will open up, well, thank you, Mr. Beebe, and I will open up discussion. Okay.
That's public discussion or our discussion?
There's no public hearing, it's just a site plan review, so it's our discussion.
So what the applicant is up against, though, is that the fire department found that there was not appropriate paved road access to the property. Is that correct?
That's pretty much a standard stock comment from the fire department, just to ensure they don't require a paved access road. They just require a road that has a sufficiently strong base to hold the truck. So you'll see, I'm not sure if I have an example on Central Michigan University's campus, but I will tell you that on university campuses, you'll often find grassy areas or sidewalk areas that are designed to hold the load of the truck that aren't otherwise vehicular access areas. And so I would expect that relates back to their requirement just to ensure that those gravel access roads remain suitable to their trucks.
If I can comment on that?
Sure.
Okay. The access drives that are shown on the plan are there for the oil company's semi-trucks, loaded semi-trucks. So there's no question that the fire trucks would have adequate stability of the roadways.
Thank you.
Move to approve SPR 2007, subject to the following condition. 1, comply with the requirements of public safety.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Kane, if you'll take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Daly,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion was approved unanimously.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is new business, set a public hearing on the proposed master plan for the October 1st, 2020 regular meeting. Mr. Kane?
So Madam Chair, I'm happy to come back to you this month with an update on our rescheduled public engagement activities leading up to the adoption process for our new master plan. You'll all recall that back in the spring, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to cancel 3 in-person engagement events that we had planned in March and April. And as circumstances continue to prevent in-person gatherings for the foreseeable future, we've worked with McKenna to identify alternative options to engage the public and provide some additional opportunities for feedback on the proposed master plan. They have developed for us a model which includes 2 elements. One will be a virtual open house that'll be very similar to the formatting that we would have had for our in-person open houses in the spring that will be held via Zoom. I am hopeful that most of the public has had an opportunity to familiarize themselves, probably more than they would have liked, with the Zoom technology over these past several months. And McKenna has some experience working with Zoom as a virtual open house format, including a recent open house in the Charter Township of Union for their proposed new zoning ordinance. That event will be held on Thursday, August 20th at 7 p.m. We'll have Zoom information, login information for that event posted on the project website, mountpleasant2050.com, as soon as it is available. The second piece of this will be an interactive web tool. So there are a lot of great tools out there that existed before the pandemic to provide for online options for soliciting public input. And this is giving us an opportunity to utilize one of those tools. This will also be integrated into our project website. And this will, again, give folks a chance to familiarize themselves with the elements of the proposed master plan and also to answer questions and provide feedback on that plan. That web tool is scheduled to launch on Monday, August 17th, and will be available to the public 24 hours a day until August the 31st. This will provide everyone, hopefully, folks who aren't able to attend the virtual open house will be able to get the same level of experience and input through the virtual web tool. Folks who can attend the open house will get to provide some input, and if folks want to do both, certainly that will also be welcomed. In addition, I'll let you know that we had previously provided our statutory required 63-day notice to certain jurisdictions under the Planning Enabling Act. We're required to let them know that we're working on a master plan. These include utility companies, adjacent units of government, such as the county and the township, and a few others. We provided a new updated notice to those entities to let them know about these upcoming events and to extend their opportunity to provide comment to the Planning Commission. At this time to date, based on our first round of notices, we only received one letter of response, which was from Isabella County, indicating that they had no comments on the proposed master plan. I'd remind everyone the master plan in its 70% form went up on the website last September. It has been up in its 100% form since January of this year. It remains live and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for access. We also have a hard copy of that master plan available at City Hall for inspection during normal business hours. So if you know of anyone who has interest in reviewing the plan or of providing any comments or feedback, please send them to the website or send them in my direction so that we can have those conversations. As we move forward with the completion of these additional engagement events, we're looking for the first public hearing to occur at the Parks and Recreation Commission on September the 22nd, to be followed by a Planning Commission public hearing on October 1st. a meeting of the Downtown Development Authority to review the plan on October 8th in a city commission public hearing to consider adoption on November 9th. Tonight, we're asking that the Planning Commission consider setting a public hearing on the master plan for October 1st. This will enable us to let the public know through these virtual events when that public hearing is scheduled to take place.
I move for a public hearing on October 1st.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kane, if you'll take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Daly? Commissioner Daly?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Friedrich?
Aye.
Commissioner Honig?
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin?
Aye.
Commissioner Leash?
Aye.
Commissioner Orman?
Aye.
Commissioner Rice?
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion is adopted unanimously.
Thank you. And does anyone want to move to adjourn to work session?
If I could give my staff report real quick, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have a staff report.
Give Jacob a chance.
There's not much to it, but I'll go ahead anyway. Now that I've interrupted. I'll just let you know our deadline for the September meeting is on Monday, and we are anticipating 2 to 3 cases. We have a potential rezoning request for a property located on South Fancher Street, a request to do site improvements to an existing 2-family dwelling in the West Side neighborhood, and a request for a short-term rental also in the West Side neighborhood. None of those cases have been submitted as of this moment, but all 3 applicants appear to be, well, I take that back. The duplex case has been submitted. The other 2 appear likely to come in either for September or October. And so in any event, we're anticipating that we will have a regular meeting in September.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Any questions for Mr. Kane? And now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to the work session.
Move to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned to work session. I assume we don't need a roll call vote for adjourning. Okay.
Madam Chair, is everybody comfortable jumping right in, or does anybody need a recess to attend to personal matters? Good.
Well, if no one needs a break, let's start the, let's start the August 6th, 2020 work session. Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You will recall that staff was asked by the City Commission to prepare a housing report in 2019, looking at a number of questions related to Mount Pleasant's housing stock, particularly related to the type of units that were available in the community and any trends within the marketplace relative to housing. That report was shared with the Planning Commission, I believe at your December 2019 meeting. It was also shared with the City Commission and remains available on the Planning Department website, and pleasant.org/planning. On the basis of that housing report, the City Commission held 2 work sessions in June to talk about some of the recommendations contained within that report and to provide direction to staff on items that they were interested in pursuing. There were 2 referrals that were made that involve the Planning Commission. The first of which is before you tonight for work session, which is to discuss the land area requirements for multiple family housing in the CD4 zoning district. I included the background memorandum in your packet. I will, rather than read the entire memorandum to you tonight and belabor the point, I'd like to just provide a very broad overview, and then I would welcome any questions you might have. The purpose tonight is just to see what direction the Planning Commission might wish to provide me so that I can prepare the appropriate text amendments and bring them forward for review and to set up public hearing at your September meeting, which will be followed by a public hearing in October. So in general, as you're likely all aware, the CD4 zoning district as well as the M1 and M2 zoning districts, which preceded it in our zoning ordinance, have since 1984 limited the number of units to no more than 15 per acre, which translates into 2,904 square feet of land area per unit. What this means is that for a typical lot within the city of Mount Pleasant, a triplex, fourplex, or other housing styles such as townhouses are not possible to construct. These are missing middle housing types, which have been identified as a gap in our housing market. And they're also the type of units that might be attractive to some of the target markets that have been identified over the years within the city, such as young professionals, students who may be interested in a housing type that's not a rooming style unit, young families, and retirees. Many communities have similar standards. Our standards are not unique. In fact, we've had some type of a land area requirement for multiple family housing since at least the mid-60s. However, many communities are also looking at revising or eliminating those rules at this time due to the fact that they do restrict these type of housing styles that are increasingly desirable in the marketplace. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission consider one of two options. One, eliminate the land area cap within the CD4 zoning district to provide for more flexibility, or two, provide for a number that's higher than 15 units per acre in order to facilitate additional housing development. I think beyond the obvious, the benefit to the ability to construct missing middle housing, one of the other things that's unique to Mount Pleasant is that we have special land area requirements for rooming dwellings. And in my memo, I've outlined how those rooming dwelling land area requirements are actually significantly less restrictive than our multiple family housing requirements. And so for areas within the community where both styles of housing are allowed, there's very little incentive to build multiple family housing when you can build much more housing for many more heads under the rooming style model. We've received a lot of public comment over the last several years with regard to the fact that there's a preponderance of rooming dwellings within the community, and that there's a lack of the type of housing that would be considered family style under our code, but that nevertheless is available to anyone: students, families, single people, young people, old people. And this is in part why I think it's not a coincidence that our regulations have incentivized the particular direction of the marketplace in the respect of the land area requirement that's in place. Table 1 illustrates how the current regulations line up, and you'll see how from the start, once you get over 2,900 square feet of land area, there's a huge incentive to go with a rooming style construction where that's feasible and available. So if for no other reason than to recalibrate that incentive structure to provide for more multifamily housing in lieu of more rooming housing, especially in light of our current enrollment situation at the university, I would recommend that the Planning Commission seriously give consideration to an amendment of that 15 units per acre limitation. So Madam Chair, I turn this over for discussion by the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Any comments?
So Jacob, those two options that you gave us, what are the pros and cons of each of those? I'm a little hesitant to say unlimited just because I imagine there's probably some scenario where that's terrible, but I don't know. You have more experience in this than me.
Sure. So I would say anytime we're dealing with a numeric cap on development intensity, the con is that it is essentially a one-size-fits-all rule. And so it does preclude situations where it might be feasible to build more housing. Or, for instance, there's a big difference between, a 2 or 4 bedroom apartment unit in terms of its square footage and the amount of building area that will result in versus, current trends indicate that there is a demand for smaller units, whether they be studios or small 1-bedroom apartments. For young folks, for single students, for adjunct faculty members who might be in Mount Pleasant for a shorter term period of time and may have a lower housing demand, those type of units could be really valuable. And when you're dealing with a unit that might only be 400 square feet on its own, you may be able to fit more of those onto a plot of land than you could a larger style apartment. Our current code also envisions a more urban style of development. And so in lieu of the past where apartment complexes were typically built with buildings with a large separation between them, with large areas of parking between them, and with significant green belts or buffers around them. When you look in the urban context of the community, just on a spot basis, looking at different places where we've had homes that have been used as offices for years, and folks have entertained the idea of perhaps turning those homes into a triplex. Properties on Broadway Street or immediately adjacent to downtown. They are zoned for multiple family housing, but because they're located on a typical city lot, the maximum amount of units that is possible is 2. And there are cases where it may make more sense for those properties to actually contain a third unit. It may be very feasible, and it may make better use of the property. But there's not anything higher than 15 will be an improvement, certainly. I think towards making more quality development possible. I would recommend that at a minimum, you attempt to get that number over the comparable rooming occupancy number, so that the incentive structure isn't tipped in the favor of a rooming unit over a multiple family unit. I would also ask you to keep in mind that a rooming unit, in addition to currently having a land area advantage, there is a built-in cost advantage for construction, because a rooming unit by nature will contain 1 kitchen, 1 furnace, 1 water heater, whereas separate units require separate infrastructure, which does add cost to a project.
Isn't the rooming unit limited to only a few sections in town? That's not all over town, though.
It's not. The primary areas where rooming units are possible are going to be on the southwest side of town, north of Broomfield Street, and south of Vowles Elementary in general. Also on the south end of town along South Mission Street and East Broomfield Street on the south side of Broomfield. And then north of campus, generally from Main Street between High and Bellows and the railroad tracks.
So those are already limited by location of they have to have a rooming dwelling. They have to be zoned for rooming.
They, in order to have a rooming dwelling, you do have to have the appropriate overlay on the zoning map. But in that area, you're not required to have a rooming dwelling. You can have multiple family, 2-family, single family. It's just the current incentive structure strongly favors rooming style development.
So the question I have is, would the land area requirement alone be enough? Because I remember when we were working on the previous master plan, we had some of the developers come in and say that, it was too expensive to do like brownstones, for example, because it would be too many kitchens. Wouldn't they still have that same argument even with less of a land area requirement?
They may. I mean, there's no way for the city to eliminate that extra cost that's associated with the additional units beyond making it more attractive as an option versus the alternative. I think to your point, that's one important aspect of this. And I think in light of the changes we may see in our housing market as a result of the university's lower enrollment, that situation may be different on the ground than it was 6 or 7 years ago, or even 2 years ago. But more broadly, throughout the community, in places where we do allow multiple family housing, I'll give you for instance, we have a vacant lot located adjacent to downtown Mount Pleasant. It could very easily accommodate 5 townhouse style units. They would fit the context of downtown and fit the context of adjacent development, and still provide more than adequate room for on-site parking and green space. And it would currently be capped at 3 units, which would be I think a pretty strong underutilization of that parcel, both from a development and tax base scenario, but also in terms of the city's longstanding goals to have more people live near downtown.
But we don't have on-street or on-site parking as a requirement, and we don't have setbacks as a requirement. So the only limit to the amount of units that can be built on a property currently is this right here, the land requirement. Am I correct?
We would have a height requirement that would apply as well. And we do have setbacks. We just don't have large setbacks in that district.
I think a change to lift the cap sounds good. I don't have any particular number in mind, or nor I necessarily see there needs to be a number, but for a while now, we've talked about this intermittently over the years, as well as when I hear from people who get hired at senior or the hospital and they want to live in a townhouse, or their idea of a condo isn't a condo that's out in sprawl surrounded by a whole bunch of grass, but a more urban setting. It's not mandated, just gives developers a little bit of extra, tools in their toolbox, a bit more flexibility as they choose where to develop and whether it's here or in other places, as they try to, seek to what, changes in housing markets demand. And you can see kind of what they're responding to in downtown Midland right now, as they're putting in more of that housing, and seems to be working there.
We
Just want to be clear that if we eliminated the land area requirement, then, and they didn't have that, then it would not open it up for, an apartment complex to go in. It would be limited to like a duplex or a townhouse.
No, it could be, this would apply if you had a larger site and you were going to build more of an apartment style building. This would apply to that situation as well. But again, only in the CD4 district. This wouldn't apply elsewhere.
That puts a limit.
I don't think you want us to make up language right here and right now. Am I correct?
I'm looking for general direction. Certainly if there's some sort of consensus around a particular number or lack of number, that would be welcome. If there's not, I would be happy to come back with some type of recommendation. Just offhand, running some numbers. If the number were increased from 15 to 30, so it would basically lower the square footage requirement in half of land area. That would keep the amount of land area per unit consistently below the same amount of land area that would be required for a rooming dwelling, and only slightly below. So for instance, for a property that had 2 units on it, or a 4-person rooming dwelling, you'd be looking at a differential of about 696 square feet, an advantage towards the multiple family. For a 6-person rooming dwelling, which would require 5,400 square feet of land area, you'd be looking at 4,356 square feet of land area for the comparable 3-unit development. So a development that could theoretically have up to 6 unrelated people, similar to the rooming dwelling, but in a format that would be 2 people to a unit or families in each unit.
Can you put that together?
I certainly can.
I mean, I'd like to see that.
That sounds reasonable.
I can include that in a memorandum next month, along with a draft zoning text change. I will tell you that the text change itself will be very straightforward, because it's essentially just replacing one number with another within the table. But I can provide supplementary information in the memorandum to explain the ramifications of that number.
That'd be good.
And maybe a couple of, for instance, what would this look like? No pun intended, on the ground.
So you would still have the 900 square foot per unit. Is that correct?
It's a 900 square foot per occupant requirement for a rooming dwelling.
But not for a townhouse?
Correct. We don't have that requirement today.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is coming together now. When I lived in Chicago, we had a 450 square foot apartment, and it was small, but it enabled us to live in a city that we really wanted to live in. So I think other opportunities like that we have here would be great for people. Not that Mount Pleasant's expensive to live in or anything, but opening up those kind of options for people would be nice.
Could we have a minimum per unit, like 900 square foot per unit?
That would be what this would inevitably mean. Right now, we have a minimum per unit of 2,904. So a rooming dwelling needs 1,800 square feet, whereas the comparable multifamily unit needs 2,900 square feet. There's about 1,100 square foot difference in what's required.
And just to be clear, that's the land area, not the actual living space, right?
Correct.
What about landscaping and trees? Where would they go?
The same place they would go under today's code. If the property in question, you can have up to a 20-foot setback in the CD4 district. And if you do, you are required to have a certain amount of landscaping within the front and side street yard if that happens to be a corner lot. And any development is required to provide street trees along their frontages as well. And any area that's not devoted to parking or some other hard surface use is required to be landscaped in accordance with code.
They're not required to have a front yard right now.
Correct.
They could have 0.
They could, yep. Which would be standard in a townhouse style development scenario.
And this is for CD4, we're talking.
Correct.
Any other questions?
Didn't know if I could pick up any more guidance on like set numbers. I always like the idea of, just seeing what this looks like hypothetically with, we discussed, numbers, 30 per acre versus 15. I mean, to me, I don't care if it's 50 per acre, 30 per acre, whatever, just something higher than 15. I think it just gives developers some more flexibility. So I'm fine with seeing whatever number pops up or even lack of a number, but just wanted, it seems like we heard from some of us, but not all of us. So didn't know to what extent we want to give Jacob any more guidance about specific numbers, or if this is good and we feel we've said all we need to say on this for now.
Matt, do you feel concerned about an unlimited, or does that not concern you either?
No, that doesn't concern me whatsoever.
Okay.
I figured it's just making sure that we're giving Jacob the guidance that is helpful for him, so when he brings stuff to us that we feel like this make it has the higher potential of making sense, and having a smooth meeting next time too.
Sure.
There'll certainly be an opportunity next month before setting a public hearing to provide additional direction on what I bring back if I've missed the target, or if the additional information or discussion prompts you to want to go in a slightly different direction. It will be easy enough to make those adjustments and still remain on track and set a public hearing if it's so desired.
Sounds good, Jacob.
Sounds good.
I appreciate the direction. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we can adjourn the work session.
Move to adjourn.
Meeting
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Hopefully we'll see many of you on the 20th of August. Virtually.
Virtually.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.